Good morning, class. Today we'll be discussing the transformation between a solid and a liquid. Now, when we're thinking about this transformation, we need to consider Pythagorean's theorem. Pythagorean's theorem is very important as we hypothesize what will be the conclusion. Now, as you're making your conclusion, it's important to consider your sentences that you will draft for your conclusion. It needs to have a subject, a verb, a noun, a preposition, and don't forget the adjectives. Any questions?
Hey, welcome. My name's Paul, and I'm so glad you decided to join us here for this series, because here's what I assume about you, because I've had the same questions in my life. I still have these same questions in my life, especially when it comes to faith. And a lot of times when it comes to faith, you have questions about faith, and you go, man, I wonder about this, and I wonder about that, but then you look around the room. Look around the room right now, and here's what the problem with this room, right? I'm going to tell you what the problem with this room, and you've always been like, something's off. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. You look around the room, and you go, man, everybody in here seems to have it all figured out. I don't want to be the person that asks a question about faith in this room, because if I do, everybody's going to know that I have no idea, because they look like they have everything figured out. I mean, they pray, and look at the way, they look this morning, and when they sing and they pray, it's like they know what they're doing, and they have this all figured out. And I don't want to be the one to ask the question, because I don't want to be the one that looks dumb, especially when it comes to things of faith, which, if that's you and you kind of watch this, and we've all played this, and we'll unravel some pieces here for you in a minute, but the danger in that is when I look around the room, and whether it's in a faith room, or whether it's in a business room, or whether it's in any kind of room, an academic room, and if I assume that the question that I have, that everybody else knows what they're doing and I'm not, that always lends us to faking it, where we pretend that we're somebody we're not, and then that creates gaps later in our life. And so here's what I need you to know. That's not a great strategy. You have legitimate questions on what you need to do. And before there was Google, and before we could just YouTube our way through things, before all that, we actually used to talk to people, right? We used to ask questions of people. We used to sit down and have coffee, and we used to get together, and we would ask questions. And I've always been fascinated. There used to be mentoring that took place, internships used to take place. And those are amazing places to learn and to grow, because usually you're sitting with somebody who knows more than you do. You don't need to sit with a genius. You just need to be with somebody that knows more about the topic than you do. That's how we learn, and that's how we grow. And I've never sat down with somebody and say, hey, can I sit down with you for a second, and can I ask you some questions? Every time I've asked that question, people go, yeah. Because you know what the person on the other side of that question goes? I must know something that they don't. Yeah, I'll spend the time to help you and to begin to do this. And usually the answer was yes. So I watched my wife do this years ago. And like 20 years ago, so I know some of you, 20 years ago, that was like, you didn't even exist, so that's okay. But 20 years ago, my wife started, we were youth pastors in Virginia, and she was like relentless with this, and she still is to this day. And she would go, so we were youth pastors, and so predominantly we had like a bunch of church kids that went to the youth group, which, no, I'm not pass on that one, which just meant interesting things. And so church kids usually, like, there's some church kids that were like legitimately, they were following Jesus. And then there was another group that like went to youth group and stuff, and they were good if someone was watching. I know you guys don't know anybody like that, but what happened was they would like pretend, right? And if someone was watching, then they were like spiritual, but if their parents turned around, or if we turned around, then they would do something. And we were always kind of watching that. And then we had some fakers, and then there was chameleons, right? And chameleons were like, when they were at school with this group, they'd act one way, and when they were at youth group, they would act another way. And then they were at home, they were like another way. And they were so confused because they had no idea who they were, because every time they were with a different group of people, they would act a different way. And so Erin would she's always had this great like sniffer, like, no, you're a faker, right? And so she kind of would sniff that out. So she would go to the parents of the kids who were the same kids, like at school they were the same kids, at youth group they were the same kids, and at their home places they were the same kids. And she was so curious, and she would always go find the parents of these kids and go, hey, you have great kids, what's your secret? We're thinking about having a family someday, and we want to raise kids, and your kids are different. what's the secret? And for years, she just had this practice, and to this day, she still does it, because we're still, and Aaron says this all the time because it's true, we're on the JV team for parenting, and we have so much to learn, and we get it wrong as much as we get it right, and we have to ask, I'm sorry, and ask for forgiveness from our kids, because, honestly, we're just experimenting on you. We're just trying it out. And so we don't know all the time. And I know you already knew that, right, El? But it's true. So, and so we try to get this right, and we're trying to figure this all out. And we're still on the JV team, but we're still growing. But the thing that even when we would act in university ministries, there would be university students that show up, and Aaron would find the parents, like on Parent Weekend, of the good ones. And they sit down and go, hey, so what's the secret? Like, your kids are great. Like, what do you know that we don't know? And so what we want to do through the course of this series is kind of do an experiment similar to that, right? And if you're gathering and watching online, we want you to be a part of this as well. And over the next few weeks, we want to ask questions and have this sense of curiosity together to ask questions that maybe we'll all take a step forward, another click forward in life and in our faith, if we just would begin to adopt this one very, very simple principle. And I don't even know if it's a principle as much as it is just kind of a goal, which is I want us all to revive our curiosity. Just to revive our curiosity, because whether it's faith or whether it's business or whether it's relationships or whether it's parenting or finances or whatever, over time, we kind of get enough answers, and we're like, I think I got that figured out, or I kind of think I know how that's going to go, or I kind of think that is, and we stop asking questions. And I think, if I'm honest, one of the things that the people that I notice are some of the most successful people in whatever their realm is, are some of the most curious people, because they never stop asking questions and being curious about what they do. And here's what I know about you, because I think it's true about me, and I've experienced it several times too. You have no idea how close you are to getting to the other side of the thing that's been difficult for you right now. You have no idea how close you are to kind of pushing through, and it may be just one more cup of coffee or curious or another article where you just get this one last piece where you have this aha moment, and you're always so close to seeing what God may want to do in you and through you on the other side. But if you stop your curiosity, it's going to stop your growth patterns. So please don't give up, first on your life, but also on this desire to learn and to grow. Don't ever think, that's good, I'm good. Oh man, you want to drive me nuts? Say that. I'm good. That drives me crazy, right? Because, that's just how it's gonna be. I guess that's just what we've kind of learned to expect. Those should be like cuss words in your head when you say them. They should be like, why would I say that, right? Or if you say, what's the point? I've tried, or we've tried this relationship before. I've tried at work, and I've tried, and I just don't have the energy to try anymore. That should trigger you to be like, wait, that's not enough. Because curiosity is the thing that could spark knowledge that may help you through a breakthrough. So one of the questions that we want to do is this thing about faith. And I know a lot of people come into this place and drive here on the lot, or they click and they come online, or they're watching on their phone or their iPad or whatever it is they're watching on. And a lot of times people say, so I get Jesus, right? I get that. I get God, and I get God created, and I'm not sure how that'll happen, and that's fine. And I know God created, and then God had a son, and he sent his son, and his name's Jesus. I get that because I believe in Christmas, right? And then, so that's a big stretch, right? and then you go, but I have questions, right? Like, I'm not sure how to ask these questions because I don't want to look stupid about something that it looks like everybody else already knows the answer to. And it seems like they have it all figured out, and they have this, and you've prayed before, I'm sure you've prayed, especially when something bad happened, you prayed, didn't you? You had all kinds of faith. Oh God, please help, right? So you've prayed. You have a Bible most likely, or you have the Bible app, so it's not like you don't know what the Bible is, but you're kind of going, what's the secret of faith? How does faith actually make a difference in my life beyond just, sometimes faith kind of feels like busy work a little bit, right? And I hear this sometimes too, and I just want to just kind of talk about this a little bit. Sometimes people will go, you know what, I hear about, I come to Gathering Point, I hear take your next step, or serve, or get involved, or give. or join a group or get baptized. I hear all that, and I think about that, and I hear this, and I wonder, and maybe you've had this question, you just haven't had the guts to ask it. What on earth is me giving, or what on earth is me like serving? How is that going to help my marriage? That's my problem. How does that solve that? Or how does me giving help me get a different job or do better in my current job? I don't understand the connection between that. Or how does me like doing stuff like checking in preschoolers, how does me checking in preschoolers help my family member who's sick? See, these are the questions that were like, I don't know if I want to ask that one because I don't want to be that guy. And so we assume, I'm sure there is a connection. I don't know what it is, so I guess I'll just do it. I mean, other people are doing it, so that must be kind of where we're going with these kinds of things. But the reality is you have situations in your life, and you have, especially when it comes to life and faith, where there's this little bit of a disconnect, and some of you have just kind of said, I know I don't know the answers, we'll just keep going. And some of you, it's just been kind of this thing. But here's what I know about me, and so I'm assuming it's true about you, and I know I'm making an assumption, but let's just kind of try this on together for a little bit. But who you are and how you process and what you believe in one season of your life will always carry over into the next season of your life, right? Because a new season of life, whether you're just out of college, or maybe you just got married, or maybe you just became parents, or maybe you just were retired, a new season doesn't mean a new you. And just because you prayed a prayer, or it doesn't mean that tomorrow will be different. And you know that. And so what we're going to explore today, and Jesus' brother writes some great stuff, some great advice, and we're going to ask our questions to Jesus' brother today, and we'll talk to Jesus. He's got some stuff to say to us at the end here today, but in the book of Matthew. But what we're going to find out is there's something that we have to do, and there's a habit that we need to develop to fill in this gap in the middle. And it involves listening to how we're living right now and listening to the people around us. And it also involves us doing some stuff in the mean. And when we begin to do stuff, it greatly increases the odds that the next season that we're about ready to enter into will be different than the last season. If not, it will probably be the same. You'll just be a little bit older. That'll be the only difference. There really won't be any change. You'll just be older doing the same things. And learning how to develop a curiosity where you are humble enough to ask questions and get help is how we prepare for what's next. And some of you are entering into some new seasons. And the you that brought you into this season is going to need to change if there's going to be lasting change and a difference, and if faith is going to make the impact you've always wanted in your life in the next season. Some of you are getting ready to graduate this year. Some of you are getting ready to graduate, some middle school, which, I mean, let's be honest, that's not really a graduation, that's just 1 year, but they make a thing out of it, so whatever, all right? Some of you are going to graduate high school, some of you are going to graduate college, some of you are finishing a grad degree. And you have to decide, is the me that got me here going to be the me that goes forward? Some of you are leaving, going to get married, and you're entering into this whole new season, and you're at the season change, and you've got to look at this. Some of you have a wedding, coming up where you're the parent or the grandparent of one. Some of you have a baby on the way. Some of you have another baby on the way, and you weren't prepared for that. And the first one was like, I don't, thank God they're still here. We don't even know what we were doing. And it's going to be different with two. We've got to begin to re-strategize with that. Some of you are on the precipice of a new job or a new school. Some of you are right there and you're getting ready to enter into empty nest, and intuitively something's going to need to change. I just don't know what. Some of you are on the verge of retirement, or you've been in retirement now, and you're just kind of wondering how something's got to change and be different. And so you see it coming, and it's coming, and you're excited about the new baby or the new job or retirement, and you're excited about it, but it also brings a certain measure of like stress and anxiety, because transitions are stressful, even if you're excited about them. Even the ones you're looking forward to. Don't believe me? Interview a few mothers of brides. Whew. Man, that's a good time. And so we have to stay curious. We can't be like the kindergartner who goes to the first day of class and goes, well, I didn't learn to read today, so I don't think I'm going back, right? It takes time to begin to go and to move into these seasons. But how you live the last season is a really good predictor and indicator of how you'll live the next season unless you do things differently. And the only way to do things differently is to be prepared. So here's what I want to do. I want to go to James, Jesus' brother, because he weighs in on this topic and he gives us some great advice. And he ends this good advice in verse 25. Let's jump to verse 25 first. He ends the good advice and he says this: you will be blessed in what they do. That's how he ends the advice. And he says, you will be blessed if you do these things. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to back up and start at the beginning of this, because there's something that you can do in this season of life that you're in right now that will set you up for success in the next season of life. And from personal experience, I can tell you this is true. This is true. But one of the best things you can do to prepare for your next season of life is to apply what you are learning and what you're hearing in this season of life, because application, not knowledge, is what makes all the difference. Here's what I know about you. You probably don't need more knowledge in your life. You probably just need more application, right? Do you need more knowledge about what's healthy to eat and what's not healthy to eat? No, you already know, right? Every time you drive past Dunkin' Donuts, you know. It doesn't stop you. It doesn't stop me, right? I mean, do you need to know more about the effects of exercise to know if exercise is a good idea? No. Knowledge is not your issue. Knowledge isn't my issue. It's application. And one of the best things we can do is to begin to apply that. And James is on this. And this is so important, so important. And he's beginning to talk about faith right here. This is what he says, James chapter 1, verse 22. He says, do not merely listen. Don't just be a good listener. See, and this is the trouble with church oftentimes, isn't it? We can come into a room like this, we can click, we can watch, and we can listen. And then we can leave, or we can turn off, or we can shut off. And we felt good about what we heard. And James says, but don't merely listen. And now, this was not really a reading culture at this point. So, I mean, we could also say, don't merely just read in the Word, to the Word, and so deceive yourself and tell yourself, well, I heard a good Bible verse, or I heard a good message, so I'm probably going to be, don't deceive yourself. Do what it says. You have to do what it says. And then we have one of the best illustrations, I think, in the entire New Testament, because I think it's just absolutely brilliant. He says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. This is just, I mean, this is fascinating, because isn't it true? Your mirror requires a response, doesn't it? How much time do you spend in front of the mirror every morning? Answer, until it gets better. That's how long you spend in front of the mirror, right? You stand there until your teeth are better. Some of you, maybe a little longer. If you're in middle school or elementary school, you probably could spend a few more minutes, sing happy birthday one more time. But you stand in front of the mirror, but standing in front of the mirror does nothing unless you make application, and it makes you better. I mean, your hair. How long do you spend in front of the mirror? Well, until it gets better. That's easier for me because I got less and less every year, so it's just easier to manage these days, right? How long do you need to stay in front of the mirror? Well, until your makeup, right, is done for, How long in front of the mirror? Till you smell better, whatever it is. And so here's what I know. Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up, and you're going to stand in front of the mirror, and you'll feel convicted about what you see, right? And then you're going to do something about it. True? But this is why some of you struggle with faith, right here. And James knows it. James knows it. Because isn't it true? Getting your hair right has far less to do with the direction of your life and the quality of your lives. And I don't know about you, but this is true for me. You probably made the biggest mistake of your life, and your hair probably looked great. didn't it? The biggest mistake you've ever made in your life, your hair probably looked great on that day. Because nobody gets credit for just looking in the mirror, do they? Nobody. So in the realm of personal behavior, we give ourselves credit all the time, right? We give ourselves all the credit in the time, well, I went to church, or I read my Bible, I read a new devotional book, I read all that. And that's like essentially, you did your hair, right? But here, the problem is on your worst sin, your worst mistake, your hair probably looked great. James continues and he says, but, whoever looks intently into the perfect law of God that gives freedom, and demonstrating this law is not a trap. I mean, Zondervan, there's a commentary that they write, and it talks about this, that demonstrating the law is not a trap. It's not something that binds you down or weighs you down, but it's characterized by freedom. The law was always designed to give you freedom. And so what he does is James introduces us into a habit that prepares us for what's next. He introduces us to a habit. Isn't it true you need some new habits? You need to stop some bad habits, and you need to gain some new good habits. And he says, stop stooping down. That's kind of the word that he looks at. Whenever he say looks intently in verse 25, when he says looks intently, that's the word there is to stop, stoop, look down intently, find our reflection in. To look intently, to look a reflection, that's a mirror. And he compares this to the way that we're supposed to love one another. And he says the New Testament is filled with all kinds of great instructions. But until you become doers, there will not be the freedom that you want. So seeing now yourself and what needs to change and doing something will provide freedom later. Growing up, I was taught, I lived in a home where we were taught to give, we were taught to save, and we were taught to then live on the rest, right? And you've heard this. I mean, Dave Ramsey, he's got financial freedom if nobody else does, because we're all, telling him, here's our money, and then, but it's really simple. If you just give first, and if you save, and then live off the rest, there's financial freedom. And when I was taught that as a kid, and my dad would take my money to be generous for me, right? And then I would have to take money and put it into a savings thing for me, and then I got to live on the rest. I'll tell you right now, that did not feel like financial freedom. That felt like a lot like manipulation, and it felt a lot like I can't stand you, right? Because it was my allowance, it was my money, they were my dollars. But those of you who have lived a little bit, isn't it true that leads to financial freedom? But it didn't feel like freedom in the moment. I heard this week about a new phrase that's being used called body count as it pertains to sexual exploration among teens and youth and college students right now, body counts, which is to have a scorecard for sexual experience, and they call them body counts now, right? But experience does not trump exclusivity when it comes to romance, right? Your experience is not what drives it, right? That's just not how you begin to move forward in these kinds of things. And I could go on and on and on now. There are certain things that feel like the opposite of freedom, that if you put in your life now and do them, they will equal freedom later. But looking and making adjustments now is how we make the change, and being curious about what are the areas of my life that need to change. And here's the thing. I've messed up in all of these areas before, and it's not, I'm telling you these because I've gotten these all right. I have not. But I will tell you that these things where we lived according to God's laws now sets you up for freedom later works. And so James continues. And the guy's, he's just brilliant. He goes on, he says, but whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, just doesn't look and walks away, but if they continue in it and not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, the way of looking to focus your curiosity, to satisfy one's curiosity, to take a look, then the promise comes where we end it. Then if you do it, not just hear it, not just pretend like it, not just act like it, then you will be blessed in what you do. Literally, you'll be happy, fulfilled, blessed. And that's the habit of being, there's a habit to being happy. And it starts with following and not just hearing, but to do these words. Being a doer now is preparation for freedom later. So in the home I was brought up in, there was practical Bible teaching, and I was taught, my dad always taught Sunday school. Every Sunday he taught Sunday school, which means he'd prepare throughout the week. And one of the things he talked to me early on was about like, obey God and leave the consequences to him. Obey God and leave the consequences. Basically do what control you now, and you're just gonna have to leave the consequences to that up to God. Because God will take responsibility for a life fully devoted to him. Now, I wonder what would have been different in my life if I would have only just been a hearer. And sometimes I was. Because some of the greatest regrets that I have in my life are associated with things that I was only a hearer and not a doer. Isn't it true? Some of the greatest regrets you have in life is not because you didn't know. It's because you were only a hearer and not a doer. And as we look at the next season of life that we're right on the edge of moving towards, isn't it true? Hearing isn't going to make the difference. What makes the difference is doing. Jesus says it a completely different way. And Matthew writes it down. And I love this, and you may have heard this story. Maybe you've even sung it probably when you were a kid, right? You may have even know the songs to this. But this is what he says. You know the song, "The wise man built his house upon the rock." Remember that song? Okay, if you haven't heard that song, Google it and learn it, but make sure you learn the motions too. Otherwise, it's not the same. Matthew writes this, therefore, Matthew chapter 7, verse 24, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, everyone who hears these words of mine, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. Essentially, a foundation for the house was built in one season. If you've ever built a house, it goes in phases and seasons, and when you're building a foundation, that doesn't feel real liberating. But a foundation is built first, and if that is built on the rock, then the rain came and the streams rose and the winds blew and beat against the house and the rain came down, remember? And the streams came up and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it didn't fall. Why? Because in a previous season, when it wasn't fun and it wasn't popular and nobody gave you credit for it, in a previous season, it had a foundation on the rock. So Jesus' brother James would say, hey, let's go back to the mirror. And I know you may be getting ready to enter into a new season. And here's some questions. That wouldn't it be great if we as church people just ask questions like these? What are we doing? What am I doing? What are you doing? What are you doing now that you shouldn't be doing? Elementary school student, middle school student, high school student, college student, retired person, parents, grandparents. What are you doing now that you shouldn't be doing? And what's going to be the plan so that you won't do that later? And then the same question could also be asked is, what are you doing right now that you should be doing? What should you be doing right now? And tell yourself, how am I going to begin to do that later? Like for me personally, one of the things, this isn't a faith issue, but like, I've got to rekindle my relationship with exercise, right? I really don't want to, but I need to. James would say, what are you doing now? James would say, well, if you're just talking about it, then you're deceiving yourself. Some of you, it's like devotions or reading your Bible or being a part of a small group. And a small group is not busy work. It's being able to have people around you where you can ask questions together. It's not where you go get the answer key. It's where you can ask the questions that are difficult together. And James would say, what are you deceiving yourself about? And Jesus says, look, your life may come tumbling down. And some of you have already seen that. And he says, look. Doing, not hearing, is what makes the difference for people of faith. It will determine whether or not you're prepared for the next season of life. Well, what's going to come in the next season? I don't know, but you need to make sure that you're in the foundation stage. And some of you skipped over that. Some of you jumped into another phase and you didn't do the basic work. Maybe the best thing you can do is start reading the Bible app or start a devotional. And the Bible app, man, it's so easy. You can just find something that you're like struggling with and you're like, click, click, click. Oh, how about that? Well, that's applicable. And so we begin to do that. So what do you need to do now and then do it? Pastor Larry Osborne, great guy, Larry Osborne says this. He says, faith is not a skill we master. Isn't that good? I like that. It's not a skill we master. It's not a shield that protects us from hardships and trials. It's not a potion or magic pill that removes all of our messes. He says this, faith is a compass that leads us towards our future. Now, personally, I would rather have a map that would tell me, turn right here, turn left here. When we develop the curiosity in our life, faith becomes a compass that leads us to become the person that God wants us to be. Can I pray with you this morning? Father, this morning, would you help ignite our curiosity? Because some of us have just kind of phoned it in. We've decided that what it is what it is. And whether it's a relationship, at home, or at work, we've just decided, well, that's what it's going to be. So would you help us to develop a curiosity so that we can ask holy questions? And help us just not to be listeners. But would you help us take that next really radical step of being doers? Even if we've tried before and it didn't go so well, would you help us to try again to rekindle that curiosity for faith and for being doers of the word? Because we all have things in our life that we ought to probably stop. And we all have things in our life that it's probably time we keep putting off and we need to start. And would you help us to do that? It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks so much for joining us at Gathering Point. If this is your first time, be sure to text GPGuest to 97000. And be sure to hit like and subscribe so you can be the first to know about everything happening here at Gathering Point. Have a great week.